grade, so make sure you have these supplies. You're going to need to put these notes in your composition notebook when we are done. You are going to need a pencil and your 2-color pencils. First thing we're going to do is we're actually going to start in the front and we're going to review that multiply decimal algorithm that we discussed in class yesterday. You'll see we have the same notes from yesterday. We're going to follow the same steps. It's just today our numbers are going to have decimals times decimals. So just like yesterday, the very first thing that we are going to do is make sure we write the number with the most number of digits on top. You can see that 4/10 and 6/10 have the same number of digits, so it really doesn't matter which one that we put on top. So I'm just going to write them down in the order that they give them to us. Okay? Then when we're finished, what we're going to do is multiply, ignoring the decimal, until the end. And we'll place that decimal back in the product at the end. 6 times 4 is 24. Put our 4 down. We're going to regroup our 2. 6 times 0 is 0, plus 2 more is 2. Then we're going to kill it, bury it, hide any evidence of regrouping, and then we're going to start with our 0. And 0 times 0 is 0. 0 times 0 again is 0. We're going to add our products together. It's going to give us 4, 2, and 0. And then we're going to count the number of decimal place values in both factors. There is 1 place value here. There is 1 more place value here. When we add that together, that's 2 places that we need to move that decimal back in our product. Remember, we started at the back and count those place values, 1 and 2. And so that's how we get our decimal back into our product, is we count decimal places. Do the decimal shuffle. So let's do another one together. All right, example number 2. We look at the digits. This one has different numbers. This one has 3. This one has 2 place values, or 2 digits, excuse me. So we're going to start by writing 3 and 25 hundredths first, and then we're going to put the 0.7 here. And then we are going to multiply. We'll worry about the decimal at the end. So we're going to multiply 7 times 5, which is going to be 35, and we'll regroup our 3. 7 times 2, 7 times 2 is 14, plus 3 more is 17, and we'll regroup our 1 again. 7 times 3 is 21, plus 1 more is 22. After we do that, we cross out that 7. We add our 0, bury it. We can hide any evidence of regrouping. And then we're ready to begin with the 0. And that's going to be easy. 0, 0, and 0. And on the other side, I'm going to show you just a shortcut for these zeros, just so you know. But for now, we're going to practice the algorithm as it is. We're just going to add them. And that's really easy to add. Once we have multiplied, added to find our product, then we go back to the original number and we count the decimal place values that we see in both factors. This one has 1, 2 place values in the factor. This one has 1 place value in that factor. That means we're going to move that decimal back when we do the decimal shuffle from the back. 3 places. 1, 2, and 3. So that means our answer is 2 and 275 thousandths. Okay. Now that we've done that, let's look at what's actually going on here when we multiply decimal times decimal. Because you'll notice that when we multiply decimal times decimal, we get a smaller product. So let's investigate why that's happening. Let's go ahead and open up our notes to the inside. And this is where we're going to need both colors if you don't have them, okay? So when we solve models, or when we're checking models, we need to make sure that we're going to use that standard algorithm to kind of solve it, and that will help us check to make sure that our model's all right. If you're ever given a model on a test, if you solve it with the algorithm, that's going to help you to be able to find the correct number sentence to match your model. So using the algorithm and models at the same time helps that we don't make any mistakes. So the first thing we're going to do is use the algorithm, and I told you I'm going to show you a separate way that we can do this. Because we have zeros in both our factors, we can simply do this. Okay? We can simply start multiplying like we normally would. 5 times 3 is 15. And regroup our 1. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 1 more is just 1. Okay? And if you want, all you really have to do is multiply 3 times 5 and write your number here. And then since we know we're going to be multiplying times 0 down here, we can just add our 0 here. Okay? We can multiply the two numbers and then put our 0 down there. But I still want you checking and doing that decimal shuffle. I want you identifying the place values that you see in both factors. There's one place value here, another place value here. You put that together, and that shows how many place values we need to move it in. 1, 2. Do that decimal shuffle and show that number going back in. All right, so let's investigate what that actually looks like using a hundredths grid. Okay, notice I said hundredths grid. That means each one of these cubes here represents one part out of 100. If we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 parts out of 100, we actually have 1/10. So taking this first number here, I want you to start with whatever color. I have the red in my hand, that's fine. I'm going to use the red for this number here. And we're going to shade our columns to represent 3/10 because that's what this first number says. It says you need to shade 3/10 of this model. Columns go straight up and down. So we're going to shade, and I'm going to count to myself. The first number is 3/10, and I know 10 of these squares is equal to 1/10. So here's 1/10, and I'm going to shade another one, which is 2/10. And I have to keep going until I've represented the first number in my problem. And the first number in my problem is 3/10. So right now I only have 2/10, which means I need to shade one more to get 3/10. And notice that I'm shading lightly, kind of on the side of my pencil. I don't want you shading too dark, and I should have told you that from the start. So on the next one, make sure we're shading a little darker. The first number shade just a little, lighter. Just shade a little lighter. With the second number, I'm going to use the light blue. And what I'm figuring out now, and when you're multiplying decimal times decimal, you're trying to figure out how many 3/10 there are in 5/10. So we're going to come back the other way and shade the other direction so we can see how many 3/10 there are of how many sets of 3/10 there are in 5/10. So we're going to come this way, and the number's 5/10. So now I'm going to shade the other direction. Shade really heavy and dark where they cross over, please. And then when you get to the end, kind of shade a little lighter so you can see a difference. So that represents 1/10 of 5/10. And then we're going to shade again. This represents 2/10 of 5/10. This double shaded portion represents our answer, just so you know. That's 2/10 of those 3/10 so far. Okay, so now we're going to shade all the way across. I've got to keep going because the second number in my factor is 5/10. So I'm going to shade again. And that is 3/10 of those 5/10. 1, 2, 3/10. I got to keep going. I have to keep going till I get to 5. I'm going to shade darker where they cross. And then lighter where they don't. So there's 4/10. I have one more tenth to go. I'm going to shade heavier where they cross, lighter where they do not. Okay, so our answer is actually represented here in this portion of our problem. So let's first label all our factors, because models will always have all the parts of the equation, and we said that this was equal to 1500ths because we did the math here. Okay, so let's look for those parts in our model. So this represents here our 3/10 in our model, in our problem, 3/10 times 5/10. This represents 5/10 of those 3/10 because I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The answer is right here. If we did this right, we should have 15 squares that overlap each other. Remember, these are hundredths, so that's why the answer is 1500ths. So I'm going to put a number, and we only have to do this on the first one. You don't have to. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that represents our answer, our product of 1500ths right there. So we have all three parts of our problem represented in our model. We have 3/10 being multiplied by 5/10 right here is equal to 1500ths because we're taking 3/10 of 5/10. All right, let's do that again over here. Ooh, we got big numbers, so we're gonna do lots of shading. Here we go. So this one is 7/10 times 9/10. So again, I'm going to take my red. I'm going to start with that. Whatever two colors you have is fine. Just use the same colors, please. First number is going to represent our columns, and so we're going to shade straight up and down 7/10. So start shading. Use the side of your pencil so you are able to shade them a little quicker. Remember, we're not going to shade anything too heavy right now. When we get our other color going, we will. But for right now, we're just going to lightly shade. I've got 3/10, and I have to keep going until I have 7. So if I know that there are 10/10 that make 100, that means I don't need to shade 3 of these, right? So I'm going to keep that in my mind and make sure that I shade all of them going this way except for 3, because 10 minus 3 is 7. So let's see, I'm at about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6/10. Is that right? Let's see, I can't count. 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10. And then that's going to give us 7/10. And I should have 3 left over if I did it right. Yep. There's 3 columns, 3/10 that are left over that I didn't shade. 1, 2, 3. Now that I've represented 7/10 on our model, I'm going to come back with my other color, whatever color that we have, and I'm going to go the other direction because I'm trying to figure out how much is there if I have 7/10 of 9/10, 7/10 of 9/10. So I'm going to come back this way. This is 9/10, so I need to shade them all down going the other direction except for this small piece right here. So I'm going to shade where they cross over heavier, and then I'm going to get real light on the other side so I can see it. Shade heavier, and then you're going to shade a little bit lighter so you can see it. We're going to go all the way across our model, lighter, oops, a little too dark there. Heavier shading, and then lighter. Heavier shading, and then lighter, heavier shading, and then lighter, heavier shading, then lighter, heavier shading, then lighter, heavier shading. And then this is my last one because I have to do 9/10. So I have to leave this last one open. Oh, I need to go do the algorithm real quick because that's going to help me. So let's do that real quick. Forgot to do that. So let's write 7/10 times 9/10. Then we're going to multiply. So we're going to multiply 9 times 7. Now, if you don't know what 9 times 7 is, you can count every single one of these squares and figure it out because that should be our answer. But 9 times 7 is 63. So I'm going to put my 3 here, and I'm going to go ahead and write my 6 here because I know when I regroup it, it's going to be 9 times 0 is 0, right? And then my 6 will be here, and that means I add 6 to it, so that's how I have 63. And because my next number that I'm multiplying is 0, I can just put it down right there, and then I can focus on moving in my product, to my decimal in my product. I'm going to identify and count one place value, one more place value, and then I'm going to move it back into my decimal place. I need to put them together though. And I'm going to go 2 place values. So let's label all the parts here. And this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that's good. Okay. This is my 7/10. This is my 9/10. My answer is all of it together, which equals 63/100. That double shaded part. Okay, we've got another one to go. This time, to give myself help when I get here to make sure I have the right answer, I'm going to do the algorithm first on this. So we're going to start with 8/10 times 6/10. And since they both have 2 digits, I'm just going to write the one that comes first down on my paper because it doesn't matter. Then I'm going to use my shortcut and I'm just going to multiply 6 times 8 is 48. Okay, and this only works when you have zeros here. Okay, that's the only time it works is when you have zeros in those factors. Then I can just bring down that 0. And then I can make sure I show that I can get that decimal back in the right place. It's 1 place value, 1 more place value, 2 place values to get it back in your answer. Okay, so that means that 8/10 times 6/10 is equal to 48/100. Now I'm ready to model that on my model. First number, first factor is 8/10. I'm going to start with my columns first for 8/10. So I'm going to shade 1/10, 2/10, and I'm going to keep going until I reach 8. And I'm thinking in my head as I'm shading, how many blank tenths should I have, blank columns should I have when I'm done shading in 8? And I'm thinking, well, if I have 10 and I subtract 8, I know I'll have 2 that I don't shade. So that way I don't have to count. I can just keep going, and I'm actually going to shade them down here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure I have 2 so I know where to stop just to make this go faster. And then I'm going to shade down. Notice I shaded kind of light and I used the side of my pencil. Then I'm going to come across the other way and figure out how many sets of 6/10 there are in these 8/10, because that's what we're figuring out when you multiply 8/10 times 6/10. How many sets of 6/10 are there in 8/10? So to do that, we shade the other direction, and I'm going to stop when I have 6 of them shaded across. I'm going to shade a little heavier where they cross over and then a little lighter where they do not. So there's 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, and 4/10, 5/10. I Got one more to go. And then 6/10. I'm going to double check. 1, 2, 3, 4 are left. So that's right. And I know that my answer is here. This portion right here tells us how many there are if we had 8/10 and we came back and took out 6/10 of those sets. Okay, 8/10 times 6/10. It's right here. So let's label all of our parts. So we have the first number here in the red, and that's our 8/10. We have the second number. We can do it on this side or this side. It doesn't really matter. Let's just do this side. And that's our 6/10 that we shaded across with our blue to figure out how many sets of 6/10 there were in these 8/10. And then we have our answer here, and it is 48/100. If you don't believe me, count every square to see for yourself. All right, so this one's a little different. This one is starting with 1 5/10 being multiplied by 3/10. So we have 1 5/10, and we have to figure out how many sets of 3/10 there are in 1 5/10. So the first thing I want to do is use the algorithm, and they both have the same digit, so I'm just going to place them here. Now I am going to multiply and take care of my decimal at the end. 3 times 5 is 15. I'm going to regroup my 1. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 more is 4. I'm going to cross it, kill it. I know that I'm going to be multiplying times 0, so I know I can just plop that 0 down there. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is count my place values to get it back in. So that's 2 place values. Oops, 1. I'm adding in my head ahead. I know there's going to be 2 when I put it together. And then move it back in, so our answer should be 45/100 that are double shaded. Okay, get ready to shade, because we're going to shade columns, and we have to shade one whole one and then 5/10 here. We're going to shade one whole one with my red. Let me switch my colors out. I almost made a boo-boo. We're going to color one whole with 5/10. So I'm going to start shading. I'm going to just shade this hole in. I'm going to make sure I use the side of my pencil. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to shade it with the side because that allows you to color quicker than it does coloring heavier. So I'm going to try to keep it in the lines to the best of my ability, and I have to shade one whole red because this represents my columns, that first number. And then I have to come back and do 5/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So once you've done that, double check. Do you have one hole shaded? Yep. And you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/10. Now I can come back and I'm going to only need to shade 3/10 of these 1 5/10. So I'm going to shade 3/10 of these 1 5/10 to see how many there are in there. So I'm going to shade real heavy where they cross over. So there's 1. And that's lighter. And then I'm going to shade here. And then lighter. I've got one more set to go. So I'm going to shade that heavier. And one more. Now it said our answer was 45/100, and I'm just going to check that real quick. I know that I have 1/10, 2/10, 3/10 that are double shaded here. This is 5, 5, so that makes another 10, so I'm at 40, and 5 more is 45/100. So that represents our answer, this double shaded portion, and that's going to be 45/100. This represents our first number, which is 1 5/10, because I shaded one whole piece and then 5/10 more. And this represents our, I'm going to put it on the other side because I've made a mess of this. This represents our 3/10. So this shows us how you get 3/10, how many are in, how many 3/10 there are in 1 5/10. Okay. All right. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to put this in your notebook. So yesterday we put whole number times decimal, and today was decimal times decimal. So on page 18, you're going to write decimal times decimal. That's going to be on page 18. Once you write that in your table of contents, on page 18, you're going to open your notebook to page 18, and you are going to glue it there. Now, remember, when you glue this in your notebook and you get ready to use tape, use one piece of tape. One piece of tape. And when you glue it, after you glue it and put that tape in, make sure you open it to put that piece of tape, because you definitely want to be able to open this for your test and look at these models, because the models can be difficult sometimes for students. This will help you know what to do on the test if you have examples in front of you. Once you're done with that, I need you to move on to doing today's practice, which is going to be on Canvas, and it is a Google practice. Everything is done on the practice. There is a video that you need to watch that has a tutorial of how to use the tools before you start. Please watch that video first, and then do not forget when you're done that you have to go back to the original Google assignment and you have to select to attach and submit when you're done. Then you need to move on to the task list that I have posted, and if you owe me work and your name's on a list, that needs to be done first before you can make any other second choices or another choice. All right, good luck, and I'll see y'all soon.